M1 powered iPad Pro. So it's going to be available in two versions as always. It's an 11-inch with a liquid Retina display. There's a 12.9-inch with a liquid Retina XDR display. We'll come to this. 6.4 millimeters thin. We've got a primary as well as an ultra wide as well as a LiDAR sensor on the cameras. There's a 12 megapixel ultra wide selfie camera now, which has the ability to kind of track you around when you are
focusing.
Yeah, so there's they're calling it center stage. We've got 5G support now on the cellular versions, USB Type C with Thunderbolt now, up to 2 terabytes of storage, up to 16 gigabytes of RAM. The 11-inch version is going to be available from $799. The 12.9-inch is going to be from $1,100, and they will be coming in the second half of May. Okay, so there's a few things here. Firstly, that the display thing is what kind of like I was like, whoa. Okay, so we've got the XDR display from Apple, which is $5,000 or so dollars, right? And that's something that a lot of pro users have liked, because when you're looking at pro displays to edit video and things like that, they go into tens of thousands.
It's like $10,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So now they've got this XDR display technology, which is using mini LEDs, like loads of these. This is only in the 12.9-inch version, by the way, FYI. And you have that level of display with a peak brightness of 1600 nits, okay? 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio, very color accurate display. I mean, this is now going, because from a performance standpoint, let me just say that I've been using iPad Pros for the past 3 years. I could still use my 3-year-old iPad Pro, and it was from 2018, right? And it would still perform really, really well, whatever I throw at it, okay?
Yeah.
So I think that had the A12X maybe, I can't remember which one it had, right? And it was super fast anyway, right? So I'm like thinking, okay, now you put in the M1, which pretty much brings it to, well, essentially brings it to the same standard as the MacBook Air, right? It wouldn't put it to the same standard as the MacBook Pro, because the MacBook Pro has a much better cooling system, so obviously that's going to give you better sustained performance, right? But having an M1 chip inside an iPad Pro with an XDR display kind of just makes this, I mean, you're definitely going for the pro users, and the pro name gets thrown around quite a bit, but this kind of is almost justified.
I was impressed with the display. Mini LED is great. I'm reviewing a Samsung Neo QLED, which is using the same tech in there, and that TV costs $2,600. This is $1,000. That's just a TV. This is, of course, an iPad with more functionality. This is why I said Apple has won computing this year, because the M1 is in the iPad. We can justify the M1 in a MacBook, in an iMac, but it's in the iPad. So the full power that you get computing wise in those devices, you're getting in the iPad. Now, Apple, to me, this is truly what Apple wants to. Apple wants to blur the lines. They truly want to make it very blurred, where any device computing wise, you go from the iPad Pro or the MacBook Air or the MacBook, you are getting the same performance, aka they're making a computing ecosystem. Really, they're trying to make it feel like it doesn't matter what you pick one. Now it's all about what is your preference to work with more than anything else. So if you're always on the go, or you're like a movie set, or you're an artist for something, then the iPad is probably better for you. But if you are maybe the editor on that set and you're editing video, then maybe it's the MacBook for you, because you need the keyboard and a mouse and all that stuff. So they're really doing that there.
So here's the thing, you just mentioned the video thing, because one of the things that I saw quite a few people talking about on Twitter was, where is Final Cut on the iPad, right? Because I think for a lot of users, as soon as you've got...
in June.
Where did you get this from?
Think of the timing. Just do the math, right? They just announced it. It coming later half of May. When is WWDC?
Very good point. Very good point. Because I mean, that's the only thing that's missing. Because being an iPad Pro user, I mean, for me, the use for it mainly was, especially when I was traveling, right? Because it's so light and the battery life is so good. I can just throw it in my bag, and like instead of carrying around a big laptop, especially if you're out and about, right? And then when they introduced Photoshop and the fact that you can just put in USB Type C, so you can easily get photos from a memory card, and you can start editing in Lightroom, etc. It just made it so much more of a useful pro tool, right? And I actually know a few people, especially with the precision of the Apple Pencil. Okay, so now once you've got the Apple Pencil, you're not going to get the same experience on a laptop, right? It's just having that canvas to pen interaction directly is something that I know a lot of creators absolutely love, right? Now, if you can bring Final Cut onto the iPad Pro, because now it's fully capable, right? With the M1, it's got the same performance, right? Okay, obviously not sustained performance, right? But it has the same performance as some of the MacBooks. So as soon as you bring that, for a lot of users, they will just buy the iPad Pro, because the iPad Pro does everything that they need, right? You've got iPad OS now, which has come a long way compared to what we had. Initially with the iPad, it was an extended version of the iPhone, right? Stretch, which was just not usable. Then you've got iPad OS, which is kind of like a hybrid. As soon as you bring Final Cut, I think that will change the game for a lot of users, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're gonna see. I know we're not gonna have a lot of events this year, but moving forward, when we go to events and things like that, and I know, look, my editor Daniel has switched to Final Cut to edit because Adobe's that's a whole nother topic entirely. But we're currently editing all my videos off his MacBook 13 Pro, right? And it's connected to a monitor. But I know, if because of this, when we go to events or when we travel, we're just going with an iPad, and as long as if it runs Final Cut, that's the way to go. Now the file system still needs to be improved in my mind. And I'll mention this that Snazzy mentioned on Twitter, and he said Apple failed in putting a second USB port in this device, and I actually agree with him on there, just because of how much ports are so important for Pro. Because if they showed people using it on set, the little video had people on set, had people using it as a viewfinder for a camera. I'm like, if I'm doing all that, I can't be just doing dongle life. It needs to have at least one extra, because then if I'm doing multiple dongles, that means I'm doing multiple things at the same time, and that's what Pro users do. So maybe that might happen, but again, they're blurring those lines and they're moving forward.
I hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want to hear the full podcast episode, then that will be linked down below. And if you want to see more clips like this, then be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss them. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on SuperSaf Speaks, and I'll see you next time.